Welcome to Not Your Typical Church Ladies, faith conversations for your real life. I'm Vicky, and each week I'm joined with my fellow workers in the vineyard, Anne and Karen, to break open the Sunday scriptures and talk about life and faith and everything in between. Join your Not Typical Church Ladies on this journey each week.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We are already in our second week of Advent. We hope that you are having a glorious preparation to Christmas. I'm here with Anne and Vicky, and we are not your typical church ladies. That is for sure, as we heard last weekend. And we are going to find out more about our season and what's going on and how we can make or help you make the scripture passages relevant to your life today. So welcome, ladies.
Hey, Karen.
Hey.
All right. So our readings, the theme for the readings for this weekend is to be harmonious. Oh, how it's so nice to think that I am. As I'm remembering the other day when I'm screaming at my daughter because she didn't get out of bed in time for school and was late yet again. So, ladies, what is like through your readings? What are your interpretations? What are your thoughts? What do you want to share with us?
Well, we have in that first reading this week, we have all those images of like the lion lying down with the lamb and like all the predators and the prey are hanging out and they're just all peaceful and getting along and a little child is leading them. So we have this image of like, it seems like beautiful harmony, but it also seems kind of impossible. Like it's definitely like, you gotta be like a miraculous thing going on here. Or like, a heavenly thing going on here. But I was really moved this week by just one sentence from the second reading. Doesn't often happen to me. A lot of times that one is harder for like I feel like it's so many usually it's just like words they can go in one ear and out the other. But this week I was really struck by the sentence from Romans, may the God of endurance and encouragement grant you to think in harmony with one another. Because this time of year can be stressful and we can be spending a lot more time socializing with our families or with coworkers or with friend groups. And I think there can be disharmony in our lives and in our social circles that can be, maybe even more pronounced this time of year. And so just what a model that is for us to have in mind as we're moving through our Advent season.
Well, I think too, right? The idea of endurance. We talked last week about being prepared, and like we're in the thick of the holidays right now, and it's hard. Like it takes a lot of endurance almost just to like cross the finish line to Christmas for families. And so the idea of, trying to just give everyone grace and, during the stressfulness of the time and trying our best to, be harmonious in the fact that we're just all human and we're all going to be tired or grumpy or like late at times, especially during this season, and that to really, put on the idea of Christ again and just trying to think the best and see Jesus in everyone as we're preparing for his birth. And that's not always the easiest thing. And so, trying to give ourselves grace, even when we fail at doing that, because it's not always easy.
And think of all like the interruptions in our lives, like as we're doing work or whatever, and we're interrupted and we're like, the best laid of plans and oh no, okay, now I have to do this. But we're always going to have interruptions where our lives are just an ongoing challenge, but having God at the center of that. But as much as we are tempted to think that we physically, mentally, and spiritually know what's best for our lives, God will have those interruptions to remind us that we are not in charge. And being harmonious, just is being a decent human being, like not getting mad that the cashier is taking too long to cash out. Especially now, I think it's going to even be worse because everyone is the employment rate and everything. So just go in with Zen and be Christ. And, we don't know what other people have gone through their day, and your smile or your presence may be the first smile that they've seen, or striking up a conversation that might be the first conversation that they've had with somebody that day that wasn't as an argument. I'm trying, like what you guys talked about with the readings, it's just, we need to be reminded of that. Definitely.
Well, and I think too, being fully ourselves. I mean, like, think about John in our gospel. Like, John's a lot. I mean, like the imagery we get of John, he was clearly beating to his own drum, but fully embracing his role in, salvation history and what he was called to do and be for preparing people for Jesus to come. But, that idea too, that part of that harmony is recognizing our individuality and that we're all a little different. And part of, I think, helping to live a little bit more harmoniously is to recognize, okay, like we're different, but how do we all fit into this puzzle to make things work? Like John had his role to play, and people might have thought it was weird, but he had his role to play ultimately to bring about salvation history as it was told.
I love thinking about John the Baptist. He's one of my favorite characters in all of scripture, because he's just like this crazy, like camel hair eating bugs out in the desert. Like he's way off the grid. He's just like out in left field somewhere, but like he's the one who prepared the way for Jesus, right? So like that judgment we can have of other people who we think are just kind of like, I don't know, crazy or out there, and but God is using everybody, right? And like, so to be in harmony, like you were saying, Vicky, it's not everybody's singing the same note. We're all singing different notes, and it's when we when it's all brought together that something beautiful emerges. And I think you were saying before, Vicky, we were talking about this, or maybe we were writing back and forth about this, you were like, I don't know what was going on with John, but he must have been like on fire because people followed him even though he was like
I love the fact that he was so out there, but that he had the courage. Like he knew his mission. He knew what he needed to do. And if he had gotten discouraged or gotten interrupted and based on like what society was telling him how he should act, we wouldn't be where we are today. And so to have that courage and that endurance and the push to see things through. And again, it wasn't John who said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan.
Right.
It was God's plan. And God was always in that center. So if we can just Zen God to the center of our holy days and not just the holidays. So going into anything else for scripture, do we want to get into the messiness?
That, like, we're told that like John and Jesus were relations of some kind, like distant cousins or something like that, we think. And just, growing up in families and with that are full of characters, I mean, like, so just like I just wonder about the relationship between Jesus and John the Baptist, and like, what was that really like? And how we'll talk more about that next week, because we've got another Jesus and John the Baptist thing coming up next week. But just in terms of being harmonious, like these were two kind of different guys, but they were both, they both were in the wilderness at one point, and God sent them both out of the wilderness and into ministry. And I just love how John is always just pointing the way to Jesus. He's not, people are following him, but he's not taking it for himself. He's pointing the way to somebody else, which is what we're all called to do. Yeah. So Karen, I love your example about like, okay, so maybe there's a grumpy cashier, whatever, but you can like John, like be the window to the Lord, and not a roadblock to that person, right? Pointing the way. Yeah. I love that.
So speaking of family and Christmas and the nitty gritty of all of our plans, our question for the conversation, continuing the conversation, is, do you guys have any moments that you want to share of holiday stress where there was disharmony, or to show people that we can have harmony? Do you have an experience with an experience there with harmony?
So I will give everyone hope, and I will share a story from the first Christmas when we were like newly forming our like blended family, and everyone was going to go to church. And it was this exciting moment, and they were all going to join us for church on Christmas Eve. Well, there was a football game that day. Don't ask me why. I don't remember the game. I don't really follow football. And my stepson was like so grumpy about having to be in church during this football game that he just hid out in the bathroom. And again, like it was a teenage boy, and this was like, but like, so if you have those moments, families, when you're like, why is my like child not wanting to go to church, or why am I like, why is this a struggle? It happens to everyone. And that was just one of those moments where I just had to like let it go and kind of just let, God take over the situation. But, especially when you're the church lady, even if you're not a typical church lady, it was one of those moments like, I am the church lady, and why don't you want to go to church with me?
I was thinking about this question, and like, ironically, I was thinking about Christmas 2020, a couple of years back, when, COVID was like at its peak. And my kids are in Catholic school, so we were fortunate that they were mostly they had the opportunity to be in school most of the time, like Sunday night, Thanksgiving weekend, before they were going to go back to school, that we were going to keep our two kids remote just for that month between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And part of it was that, my mom and my sister both live alone. We really wanted to be safe to be with them at Christmas. And we just, I don't know, it was a decision we made because we wanted peace during Advent and harmony during Advent. And it was at a time when it was like, I mean, gosh, trying to manage like online learning and in-person learning, and Brian's teaching schedule. He's my husband, he's a teacher, and like my work schedule, and trying to get, all these teenagers at the church, in step. And, even though we weren't meeting as regularly, like it was just a really stressful time. But for that Advent 2 years ago, we made a decision that we were going to be home for Advent. And, even though there were moments each day when I felt like I was managing 4 people's to-do lists and not just my own, and that was hard, it was still harmonious time together that we had, and we just kind of hunkered down and we were together, and we had a very quiet Christmas with just my mom and my sister. And, so now, given 2 years of distance and time, I'm cherishing that time. And I noticed too that even like last year, when we had a much more normal Christmas, we didn't bring everything back, right? We were much more selective in the traditions we were going to do and the ones we weren't going to do. And so I'm hoping we can continue that spirit this year, making harmonious decisions, about how we live our Advent out.
I have always been a very like, this is tradition, like with family gatherings and stuff. And when Jeremy and I first got married, I was also working for the church at the time. And so our first Christmas, I was at Mass, then we went to his parents, his family. And then I was working in the city. Then we drove to Mass and to have Christmas with his family. Then we drove back into Rochester to have Christmas with my family. And it was just like, why are we doing all this? Like when we got married, like both families did Christmas Eve. No one did Christmas Day. And I'm like, this is crazy. We're running on Christmas Eve. But then like Christmas morning, it was just like, oh, this is so cool. Like there's no running around. There's no bringing gifts to anybody. So in the chaos and the unharmony that I was feeling and feel, I guess, because we still do that. We still do all families on Christmas Eve, but we're all in Massachusetts now. So that's a little bit better. The disharmony of Christmas Eve and feeling torn in 18 different directions. But then Christmas morning is such a peaceful harmony. And I've learned to let go of traditions that had been, and now we've made our own. And like you were saying, like we are very simplistic on Christmas Day. I wake up first, look at my Christmas tree, and just have that time. The kids wake up. And one thing that I have learned from a mentor, Leslie Barkin, is her kids would wake up at like 3 a.m. and want to open up presents. And so finally her and her husband were like, we're going to go for a walk before we open presents. And so they would always go on like a nature walk around their house. They had some land. And I was like, I like that. So I ended up, we do a breakfast bake and we have breakfast first and then we open presents. And it's just a time to be together as a family and not just start our day with chaos. And so that and it's hard if you haven't done that in the past. I know it's going to be hard because your kids are going to be like, why do we have to do X before we do presents? But maybe challenge yourselves this year to take a little bit of time from waking up and opening presents and just trying to find that harmony as a family unit, because without your family unit, you wouldn't be where we are. It's hard. It's really hard though. I think sometimes we think it's better than it is. Like, yeah, this is perfect. And then it isn't. But all right. Our other question that we had was, which gift of the Spirit are you thinking of praying for this Advent?
Oh, yes, because that's in the first reading this week.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I think it's going to be wisdom. Wisdom to make harmonious choices for myself and my family, which could often be countercultural choices and difficult choices to make.
I like that. I think that's always like, I mean, if there's ever a gift that I pray a lot for, it's wisdom. And also I think patience with myself and with others, especially in the craziness of, the holiday season, to have a little bit more harmony, hopefully through having patience and just really being as present as I can be to everyone that I'm put in front of. Patience
for me, like, I think just with everything that's happened personally in the last couple of months, I need to be not only patient with other people, but patient with myself, and not always thinking that I'm not doing a good job. So for families out there, that is my, yeah, you get those little things and you're like, I'm just not doing good, but we are. And
Erin, you're doing great.
Thank you. And families.
Everybody else out there, you're doing great too.
Exactly. We need to hear that from others. So thank you.
Encouragement and endurance, right? And harmony.
It always works out. It just is when you're in the thick of it. It's like, is there an end? What's it going to be? But trust in God that it's going to be okay. And everything is going to work out.
It's a good note to end, I think, for the week.
Yeah. And everybody, you're awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time to be present with your not typical church ladies, and know that we love you. We thank you for everything that you're doing for your family and for your spiritual journey. And we hope that these little tidbits and nuggets of reinforcement help you in your Advent journey. So we will see you next week for week 3, and enjoy. Have a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. On behalf of Anne, Karen, and myself, thank you again for listening to this episode of Faith Conversations for Your Real Life. Please make sure to subscribe to wherever you're listening or watching this episode. You can find the readings linked in the description box below, and we can't wait to see you again next time on Faith Conversations for Your Real Life with your favorite not so typical church ladies.